There are things that you would never think leaving one day. I had the most traumatic physical experience, but before immersing you into my worst nightmare, I would like to make presentations. Hello, my name is Audrey. I am 27 years old. I live in Cameroon and here is my story. Before we continue with the story, do not forget to click on the notification button in order to get notified at every new video posted. Thank you. That week was a much busier one than normal. Apart from my job that I had in my hands, I had to take preparation courses for an internal exam. It was a lot of work, and I was starting to feel an unusual migraine. At first, I thought that maybe it was because of my myopia problems, which had been neglected by myself for some time now. So I started wearing my glasses again, hoping that this headache would leave me alone. But unfortunately, wearing glasses did not have the desired effect, as the more the days passed, the less I felt good. I had trouble reading, seeing, and even concentrating. So towards the end of the week, every time I finished school after work, I was shivering with cold and I had some kind of internal fever. I then understood that I was potentially suffering from some sort of malaria, which required immediate treatment if I wanted to be in a good shape as soon as possible. So I started the treatment for malaria immediately. At first, everything was fine since it was an oral treatment. Despite the fact that I hate pills, I only had one take a day, so nothing really bad. Moreover, the day I started my treatment, I was supposed to make a work trip to the western region of my country and by extension, attend the funeral of my best friend's dad. A trip that I actually did that Friday evening, despite the fever and pouring rain. Once I got to the west, I went about my business as best as I could, and in fact, I was even able to lend a helping hand to the bereaved family by serving food to the guests. But shortly before my best friend's dad was buried, I had to apologize to the family because I was starting to feel less and less well. So I took a hotel room since I couldn't go back in my condition. That night was horrible, despite the treatment I was on. After long hours of body aches and intense fever, I was able to wake up the next morning with some energy to get to the service car that was waiting for us to reach to our city of residence. Once I got home, I went to bed hoping that the fatigue I felt was because of the trip, which lasted for about 5 hours. After I woke up, I didn't still feel better, even though it was my last day of treatment. The next morning, I was prescribed by my family doctor a new anti-malarial treatment, hoping that this time I would feel better. This new treatment was intravenous because the doctor advocated that it was more effective to have the meds pass directly into my bloodstream. But I was far from imagining the ordeal that would follow after this decision. Barely 24 hours after starting the new treatment, I began to have abnormal body aches. Of all the times I suffered from malaria, I have never had so much pain in my body and in my flesh. I felt like my muscles had been peeled off my bones. I couldn't turn or move without having excruciating pain that pierced my soul. First of all, I told myself that it was because of the disease which did not want to leave my body, and that at the end of the treatment, it was going to have the cure I wished for. So I waited. The day after I started having the excruciating pain, I woke up scared for my life. I opened my eyes. My gaze was glued to my bedroom ceiling with my baby crying for her 5 a.m. bottle. As usual, I wanted to turn to my bedside to retrieve her bottle of water and her milk in order to be able to mix. And that's when I realized that I was totally unable to move. I felt like paralyzed from the neck down to the tip of my feet. But my daughter kept crying because she was asking for the food she used to get on her first morning cry. While I was still trying to realize what was happening to me, my mother came into my room, wondering what was going on. It was then that I explained to her how I felt while she was bottle feeding my daughter. That I was now unable to do myself. After a little conversation, she took the phone and called my fiance, who was on a work trip, and who recommended that we keep calm and call the doctor first before panicking. We followed his instructions and called the doctor, who reassured us that sometimes malaria had effects of this kind, so we had to be patient and wait. After 24 hours of waiting, things were going less and less well. I could no longer get up on my own to pee. I couldn't even lift a glass to my mouth. I also had so much pain in my flesh and in my joints every time I wanted to make the least effort. One of the things that hurt me the most was the fact that my daughter, who used to play alongside with me by throwing herself on me, once again tried one of her pranks by jumping on my body. But it hurt so much when she landed on me that I yelled at her with all my might, something I had never done before. She left my room crying, not understanding what was going on. I saw fear forming on her face. I felt so bad about my reaction that I couldn't hold back my tears. I cried despite the pain, and I can at least say that I was lucky to have my mom and my nanny present to support me with my baby. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have gotten out of it with my fiance not being in town. This is how several days after having muscle pain, I could no longer suffer in silence at the bottom of my bed while waiting for the attendant physician to give any green light whatsoever. My fiance came back and I told him to take me to the hospital to see another doctor to have a second opinion on what was going on. And that's how at the hospital they discovered that I was having a drug intoxication, results of the new prescription given by my doctor. After a meticulous consultation and blood test, it turned out that there were exacerbated accumulations of anti-malarial drugs in my blood, which poisoned me to the point of making my muscles completely lethargic and paralytic, and that it took very little for my situation to be irrecoverable. They prescribed me follow-up with hydration infusion to be able to evacuate all the toxins that had accumulated in my body over the last few days. I was in shock by what I had just learned, yet I blindly trusted my doctor. Once at home, I spoke about it to my mother, who did not fail to tell my medical adventure to my older sister, who is a judge. Revolted, she decided to file in a complaint for medical error, and despite our pleas for her to drop the case, it's been a few months today since the case was brought to the court, and we won our case on a settlement of 20 million CFA francs for the damaged costs. As for me, I continue to recover little by little from this trauma, which almost cost my mobility for life. I still find it hard to stand needles or even see them, and I still continue to have occasional muscle pains caused by the poisoning.